What's going on, Print Hustlers? Welcome to another episode here. I'm your host, Bruce from Printavo, Simple Shop Management Software. We've got our co-host here, Steven Farag out
How's it
of
going?
Campus Inc. I see you're held down in your bedroom as well as we are. Now, granted, we are recording this kind of late, so if you're watching the video, that's why it looks like we live in the basement or something like that.
We still live in
Um,
the basement of our parents' house, Bruce. It's okay. You can tell them.
we're okay with it. The biggest news here that we're going to talk about that's on everybody's mind, that's all of the media, that's you know posting more and more on Facebook is COVID-19, aka coronavirus, and its effect to shops.
This is nuts. What's interesting is I love to hear us after more news breaks. Like tonight, we heard that they postponed the NBA. Tom Hanks has contracted it or whatever. March Madness will be played without any fans. They've closed down tons of universities to all go online. So I'm curious how our opinion or what we're going to talk about today, like if that's going to change in a week.
I think it's going to be very interesting, mainly because not all the facts or the extent of what's going to happen is known. There's so much uncertainty. I mean, we're seeing that with the markets. The stock market has just been dropping like crazy. Maybe that's this. Maybe that's the all the oil issues with OPEC and Russia. Who knows? It's very hard to say. But either way, tying it back to our space, the garments and the textile industry. I mean, what are the effects you're seeing? Have you seen anything this past week, 2 weeks, Steven?
Well, Bruce, as most viewers know, I print for different universities on college campuses for different events, and we just got word today that most all campuses are going to be going remote, and a lot of big events coming up are also canceled. So, yeah, if there was a gut punch that I've gotten in 5 years of business, today was one of them for sure. Kind of weird feelings, like I don't really know how to feel. I'll be honest. I'm a little scared. I feel confident. I can't, like I have to kind of be a facade a little bit,
Hmm.
because I'm like a leader. It didn't really hit me until like I think it was last night. I was just looking at, our financials and money, and I'm like, what's our runway right now? Like, if I were to just like have to not print another thing, what would a week, a month, a year look like? Could I make it? My business partner Jed is always like, well, like you don't know what it was like in '08. We haven't been through it. You haven't been through a recession. You haven't been through this, and all those lessons that he's been like teaching me and hounding me, like I'm like, oh wow, like some of these things are becoming very apparent. I think the other thing is too, like everything's always going so well, and then this kind of came out of left field. So I think like a lot of different emotions, a lot of different thoughts. You don't know who to trust. Very weird day in my print shop. I think my employees kind of saw I was a little distraught today because we had lost a couple big orders, and I kind of like didn't know how to respond. I was like, oh, that's not good. So I don't know. How about you? How about you guys? I mean,
In tech world, I think it's very interesting. I think a lot of investors are a little bit taking up just a quick pause to assess the environment a bit more. We're definitely seeing more shops being affected, live events very big time. Like almost all live events have been halted. Events are stopping, conferences are holding. So that's definitely affecting business. I just got off the phone earlier today with a bunch of different shops in that space, and so they're really, really curbing back. They're actually letting go of a couple people temporarily until hopefully this moves on or blows over, which is part of the unknown as to when that is. Even non-live events, I mean, you're starting to see it with larger orders that you mentioned were getting canceled. And not just that, but it's like, okay, if there's less gatherings, there's less events, there's less things happening, people are not purchasing, and then that affects the sales as businesses go down and as they think about promotional products, I'm sure it's a bit of a shift.
right. I mean, I think like t-shirts, we're event planners. Yes, we're t-shirt printers, but like our t-shirts are usually for events or celebrations or something. Just today, the university said no gatherings of more than 50 people, right? Like most of my orders are over 50 pieces, right?
Right.
I think from the consumer standpoint, everyone's going to be like, well, okay, maybe we should hold off on those shirts. So, I think the other part though is everyone's taking it one day at a time,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
it feels like the news shifts so heavily day by day.
and unfortunately, like in a toxic world, like you don't really know who to trust, what to think, how much of it is emotion, how much of it is, whatever.
Are there
So
any business plans like a not I shouldn't say a doomsday plan, but backup plan per se that's affecting I don't know, hiring or equipment purchase or what?
sure. I mean, who wants, like, when the economy's good, right? Like, business is booming. I mean, if we just look at the last 5 years of printing, right? Like, when have we really seen a downswing, like a heavy downswing? And like, people are buying equipment aggressively,
Financing aggressively.
financing more autos, like, how do I get more employees, like, and I think this is the first time where it's like, the squirrel, like, protect your nuts kind of thing. It's like the first
Hmm.
feel like that a little bit. The good news, I was just talking to Carson, my fiance, on the phone, and I'm like, hey, the good news is people are still going to need t-shirts when this is all over.
Yeah,
Right? We can't panic.
sure. Okay, so worst case, best case, right? Best case is a 3 month or something thing. Everything rebounds. We're not even talking about it. Kind of like SARS maybe or H1N1. Obviously, there was very unfortunate circumstances that happened, and people lost their lives. And then, you know, economy swung back and everything was fine. This definitely is a lot more. I don't know if potent is the right word, but it pushes a lot harder into the economy. So I think what's interesting though is that the unknowns that you mentioned, maybe that pushes a little bit more caution. I don't know, like
Yeah, I mean, no one
are
really
you were
knows.
planning on making a bigger hire recently or what?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, we put traction on hold for a minute, hiring production managers and a
Right.
marketing team and scaling this and scaling that. Like, yeah, of course. Today I just like was like, whoa, that's not important anymore.
Sure.
I actually wrote out last night sitting in bed a highlight, like a very high level bulleted list of things that we're gonna do just to cover our rear ends.
Hmm.
Um,
What was on there?
I mean, I'll kind of share a little bit of it. I literally called it like Corona Campus Inc. business plan, and I said, let's assume for a second the university is shutting down for 3 or 4 weeks, and that we're not going to be able to print for any student events. Let's just assume, they're going to allow kids to be able to be on campus, just like work remotely or whatever. But let's assume everything's canceled. What do we need to do, right? And so the first thing I said is like, how much cash do we have sitting in our bank? So like the first thing I did this morning was I took a financial snapshot. I took how much cash we had on hand, our
Hmm.
accounts receivable, and our
Hmm.
accounts payables. So, with those three numbers, it's how much money you have, who owes you money, and how much money do you owe.
Sure.
And I basically put that on the back of paper and said, okay, like if I were not to print another shirt and I collected all of my money and paid on all my debts, how much money would I have?
Hmm.
Right? That's like the first oxygen mask. The second thing I did was,
How
um,
many months are you will share how many months of that's a extreme like if there was
yeah, that's
zero
the
coming
extreme.
in.
Like we're fortunate where we've built up a little bit of a bank and whatever. But I looked at payroll. So like the next thing I looked at was like, okay, runway.
Hmm.
Right? Like, how do I, say I don't print another shirt and I just need to retain my employees, don't even have them come to work, just retain my employees. How much would that cost a month? Could we be fine for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year? And then I made two huge moves today in the business. I said, I want my accounts receivable to go to zero as quickly as possible, meaning anyone that owes us money, get that money collected. Let's call it the Red Scare
Who
because
did you somebody that works in front office? You just said start calling, start emailing.
yeah, just like get credit cards over the phone, start collecting money because you don't know what happens. And, a second a business no longer can pay you, you're just on their list of,
Right.
debtors. You know what I mean? So I was like, I need big invoices paid because I want to build up the amount of available cash we have, right?
Sure.
God forbid, like we use credit cards. Yeah, could we make the minimum payment on a credit card? Fine. Yeah, we could do that. But the one thing that I don't want to do is loan people money because that's money that's mine, right? So I made it very clear this morning that I wanted our accounts receivable to come down to like nothing. Any red flags needed to get paid immediately. And we basically made like a punch list. said, okay, if we get this and this and this, we're in a good spot. These are red flags that I'm concerned about. We obviously work with students a lot, so I don't want students leaving campus and having
Hmm.
bills.
Right.
Uh, and then the other big move I said is everything's prepay. Unless it's a purchase order issued by the university that's, backed, everything will be prepay. We'll make it very clear that once we start printing, there is no turning back on the order. It's easier to refund someone than to ask them for money, I think. And so I
Sure.
just said I don't want a single order that is not prepay.
So that's
Um,
like for customers that like, oh, I've been doing this for, it's like,
yeah,
hey, we're,
hey, just due to all the things that are going on, we are requiring all orders to be prepaid up front.
yeah,
Otherwise, we can't accept your order. And me and my team looked at it and we're like, okay, this is gonna be a permanent move now, right? We've been trying
yeah.
to we've been trying to figure out a way to make it a permanent move, and now
The
it's a permanent.
coronavirus made it permanent.
Coronavirus made it permanent.
So maybe, I mean, that's a good opportunity. What are some other opportunities you feel like you see? So prepayment's big, getting tight with expenses is big. Are you kind of combing through your credit cards to see,
Yeah.
hey, what the heck is
So
this? Or
the other thing that I did was I started looking at all my subscriptions, right? Like I'm an app king,
hmm.
and I was like, hey, if I needed to, I could slash $2,000 a month right now. Like I don't need to send out emails from Mailchimp, right? Like I don't have to or whatever, right? I still need Zapier. That's important. Never get rid of Zapier.
Zap King. We need to
Yeah.
hire you as an ambassador.
Yeah, I'm on the maximum Zap plan. It's crazy. But anyways, I basically made my list of, hey, what are things that I'm not, like I could cut? And then I just looked at like spending of like, okay, so I literally set on here zero excess spending. I know that you just bought toilet paper, Bruce, saw it on your wife's Instagram.
That was not stocking up. I'd like to first say there's
you
been
were-
some
you were just
spin.
you were just replenishing. But like, in my business, I always say like, if we're not going out of business, buy enough supplies for the next 3 months, 6 months,
Mhm.
whatever. Where I'm just like, no excess spending, buy what you need. Any purchases that are large like need to go through me first. And then the other thing that I created was a daily burn. And so basically I took my overhead from last year, not including my cost of goods sold, divided that by 52 weeks, 5 days in a week. I figured out what it costs to run my business every day. And I basically said, if I can produce this much per day or have this much throughput, I can keep my doors open and keep all my employees here. If I consistently can't do that, then I need to start laying people off. And so I did, in fact, make a list of people I can retain, people I maybe might cut back. The good news is we have a lot of student employees that are part-time. They'll be home. So we won't have to pay them. But I don't want to have hard conversations, but what if it gets to that,
Right.
right? So I literally,
Which will
put
probably a stage before that one still. But
right.
that's a really good point. That's a really, really great way of looking at it, especially seeing the flex, the kind of gray area in your budget to be able to slash. And this is very profit first. I remember Mike talking about this where he's like, I'm sure you could find 1,000, 5,000 here or there that you just may not even need, but it's just been kind of cushy.
If we can get through this and I can break even, or maybe I lose a little bit of money, like a January month, so be it. We're gonna
Sure.
get through it. But I don't want to have to, start looking other ways. I think it would have to be pretty severe for that to happen. My business partner Jed, who's just been through it all, is like, yeah, we'll get through it. We'll be the first to the last. But it is definitely scary for, first time kind of going through something like this.
Sure.
So
That's a really good point. So just to summarize a couple of those items, is reviewing credit card statements, going through bank statements, just making sure on a monthly basis what are things that are excess that are non-critical to delivering value to the customer. I think one thing that I was balancing out though is momentum around things, right? Like hiring, for example, takes a lot of momentum to get going. So if you cut it plain cold turkey, I mean, you may have taken a month or two. Think about like a production manager. Like if you're actively putting in an hour or two a day, that one's a little bit tricky and slightly unsure. We were just looking at signing a lease, hopefully a longer term lease this month. I'm sorry, this week, which will maybe hold for a week or two just to double check what's going on and just wait. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. Are there any things that you feel like we're not covering maybe for a smaller shop that might have less flex?
I think the smaller you are, actually probably the safer you are. That sounds really weird, but like when you're in charge of the livelihood of others, it's something you take on yourself pretty hard. But I think, trying to figure out, take your overhead, so everything that is required to run the business, but doesn't include the shirts and the ink per se.
Mm-hmm.
Divide that out by 52 weeks in the year, 5 days a week, and that's how much your business is going to cost you every day. So if you just take that number, just know that like if you aren't producing anything that day, it's still going to cost you that much to the cash register a little bit. And just like have that number in the top of your head, because too many consecutive days is really dangerous, or weeks for that matter. This is what we call like recession proof, I guess, is all the lessons, we've learned. I think
Right.
all the promotional product companies have probably sold out of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, I was
Good
just at the store.
good time to sell like promotional product hand sanitizers. I don't think we need to add fuel to it. I think we need to let it take its course and get out of it as quickly as possible. Maybe have some marketing campaigns ready to go when we get through this to sell some more shirts.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Um,
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the good way, right? Is that, I'm just gonna put fingers crossed here, but it's not gonna last forever. So, if we're talking maybe a year or 3 months, 6 months or something, we can come out strong. It's a really, really good opportunity to lean up, to understand where the holes are in the business and be able to evaluate.
it's a little course correction. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how this all happens. The light at the end of the tunnel is people will still need t-shirts. So, if an event is necessarily getting canceled, maybe it's getting postponed, right? I think the other advice that I have is be fair with your customers, right? They're in just as much of a tough situation as you are. So if you took in an order, you have the shirts, you haven't printed them yet, and they desperately need to get out of it because they might go broke trying to pay for the shirts if they don't have income from their event, see if you can, get them to pay a restocking fee or something like that. But no reason to get, hostile or whatever with customers because we're kind of all in it together, you know?
Sure.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's a great one. Thanks for sharing some of those tips, and it sounds like you got some stories behind some of these things as well here. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We'll definitely be able to see you guys next week on this. Hopefully, have one more positive updates. I'm sure we'll get back to traction as we've got so many more chapters to be able to cover. Don't forget, Print Hustlers Conf, July 24th, 25th, down in Chicago. It's going to be a great time. We've rented out a beautiful place at the Ace Hotel, so that's going to be really, really exciting. We'll see you guys there. This is Bruce from Printavo, signing off.
See ya.